A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. I'm Ritwika Gupta. In line with World Tourism Day, we'll be bringing you a series of conversations this week focused on the travel, tourism and hospitality sectors in India. Tonight we are focusing on DigiYatra, an industry-led digital initiative coordinated by the Ministry of Civil Aviation in India. A lot of us frequent travelers might already be familiar with DigiYatra that utilizes facial recognition to verify passenger identities at various checkpoints such as check-in, security and boarding gates without the need for physical documents. But how does it play a bigger role in India's travel and aviation industry, and what lies ahead for the future of tourism in India? All that and more in conversation today with Suresh Khadakbhavi, CEO, Digi Yatra Foundation. Thank you, Suresh, for joining us today on Leaders of Tomorrow.
My pleasure, Ritwika.
So I want to begin this by asking you to tell us a bit about the initial motivation behind creating DigiYatra. How did you identify the need for such a platform in the Indian travel sector?
So this goes way back to 2015, right? And during that time, if you remember, Indian aviation was growing at a phenomenal rate, and especially I was at Bangalore International Airport, and the growth rate at Bangalore International Airport was year on year 20 to 25%, right? And with that kind of a growth, we were like, from a terminal built for an X size, we had to double the whole terminal capacity. We did that, and as soon as we built it in that year itself, we saw that, okay, again, we have reached capacity. And therefore, the thought process of our management was, okay, how do we manage this? I mean, the brick and mortar way of managing growth in passenger traffic would not be the most optimal way, right? Or the most efficient or the most environment friendly way. So our management began to think about, why don't you think about, newer ways of passenger processing, etc. And as we were planning to build a new terminal, that's where there was a workshop where we were asked to sort of write a journey in at the new terminal 2, right? And we were each asked to write this journey, and I wrote this very simple journey where passenger goes from the airport entry gate to every touch point without him or being asked any kind of documentation. Passenger just walks through and reaches the boarding gate. So this was the sort of journey with my we called it as the my face is my boarding pass, right? And that was the journey that I wrote a story of a passenger going through Terminal 2 of Bangalore International Airport. And that's when, the whole initial thought process began as to, okay, how do we make this happen, right? And for once, we were all thinking about, what is the need of the passenger, right? We put the passenger at the core and center, and we said, okay, here is the passenger, and here are the passenger's various requirements. And if you typically look at the passenger journey, right, I'm sure you must be a frequent traveler, right?
Right.
And when you travel, there is that stress in your mind. There is that concern in your mind. Am I carrying all my documents or not? Am I carrying my boarding pass, my identity card? And then when you reach the airport, you have to show it at multiple touch points, right? And each of these touch points, there is a function that is being carried out, right? So security has a noble function of ensuring that all passengers are safe when they fly. So they have an SOP, which is a standard operating process, check the identity card, check the name on the identity card, check the face on the identity card, check the person, check the ticket or the boarding pass. All these are standard operating procedures defined for them. And for each touch point, there is a process which is defined. For every process checkpoint, this process, whoever carries out the process it's a sacrosanct sort of a process for them, right? However, what was not sort of really given weightage or given an attention was what is that inconvenience that the passenger goes through, going through all these processes. So this is where the change actually began. And then once we sort of conceptualized this, we said that, okay, here is something which certainly could be made possible. Technology intervention can help enhance this experience. And that's where, from one touch point to the other touch point, how does the identity validation get done? How does the travel document validation, which is the boarding pass validation, get done? And this is something which we began to discuss with OEMs, various OEMs across the world, and also various, DCS providers, which is the departure control system providers. So at that time, a couple of them, we were able to work with them. And then we said that, okay, here is something which we can showcase. And in January 2017 is when we actually rolled out the first pilot. This was a proof of concept, which we started with one airline. And this was domestic, right? And we used to have one process checkpoint for just one flight per day we used to do. And we carried this pilot trial for almost 3 months. And what used to happen is passengers were asked to enroll using their Aadhaar, and then using hand wave, they would get validated, and then they would go through various touch points, and then finally reach the boarding gate, right, with just wave of the hand. And this was such a wonderful process. Passengers were really happy. And while I used to take feedback from the passengers, they used to say, why don't you scale this up across the airport, right? Across all the touch points. Why don't you scale this up across all airports in India? And that's when, we felt that this has a tremendous potential, right? And we sort of, started to also call the regulatory authorities. And many of the people that we met from the ministry and the regulatory authorities like Bureau of Civil Aviation and Security, CISF, everyone were impressed, and they said that, okay, this can become the Indian, standard, right? Meaning that, face as the single token, or my face is my boarding pass, can become the standard. And that's when we were asked to, okay, take this journey forward. And then, of course, it certainly wasn't one airport which could take this whole initiative up. So we formed a small unit which was called as the digital cell under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. And under the digital cell was three levels, right? One was the secretary of MOCA, who headed the initiative. And then we had a steering committee. The steering committee was all the CEOs of the 5 public-private partnership airports, and also chairman of Airports Authority of India. And under them was people like me and so many other SMEs from various other airports. So we started to work together. We spoke to airlines, we spoke to passengers, we also spoke to various regulatory agencies as to what could be the process. How do we define this whole passenger process across the airport? And eventually, we defined the whole process end to end, which is from the airport entry gate to the boarding gate. And then it went through as a policy document, which we submitted to the ministry, and the ministry reviewed it, vetted it, and then subsequently it was published in August 2018. So that's when the actual policy got rolled out, and that's the whole start of the whole initiative.
Suresh, what have been the most significant challenges in implementing DigiYatra across Indian airports, and how have you addressed them?
So the challenge that we faced was, first was, the massive adoption level, right? When we started, so after the policy, when we actually rolled out the whole ecosystem, it was in December, 1st of December, when the Honorable Minister launched DigiYatra, 1st of December 2022, right? And when this was launched, we were not expecting this phenomenal growth in passenger traffic that we will get. So we had 3 airports at that time, and 4 more airports were added in the next 6 months. But the growth in passenger traffic was phenomenal, and obviously there was a reason for that, right? And to manage that growth is something which was a challenge for us from an application scalability perspective, because from the back end infrastructure perspective, we were like ready. but application scalability was a challenge for us. We had initial teething issues, and then we, of course, got over that. Other issues, for example, were more local kind of an issue where, the passenger flow itself, right? How do passengers go through this process? You cannot go like, in an uncontrolled manner. You have to go in a systematic, methodical manner where you have to wait for your turn for the e-gate, right? When the passenger at the e-gate gets processed, only then you should move to the e-gate. Those kind of operational challenges were there. There were other challenges which we also faced, which is at some of the airports, we had a lot of background light. So from the background light, like sunlight, if it comes in, into the camera, then the face capture becomes a little bit difficult, and due to which matching would become an issue, and passenger would be rejected. And apart from that, the biggest challenge that we faced was, although we kept saying that we have built an ecosystem which is completely privacy by design, tamper evident, privacy preserving ecosystem, it was difficult for us to explain to people, right? Self-sovereign identity, the cutting edge concept that we have used, is not easily understood. So for us, that was the biggest challenge, where we first, of course, we did not focus too much on this message. So now what we have started to do is completely have a focused approach on how do we communicate that, this is a privacy by design ecosystem, that DigiYatra Foundation does not store any of the passengers' credentials or personally identifiable information. It's all there in your own phone. That it is safe. So all those kind of challenges are the bigger challenges that we have faced.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. In line with World Tourism Day, we are chatting all things travel and tourism with DigiYatra. Listen in. So frequent travelers like me are very familiar with DigiYatra, but tell me what strategies are in place to increase user adoption of DigiYatra, especially among those who are not tech savvy.
So, good question, right? So fundamentally, if you look at the whole process, right, your face is your token, and then all that you have to do is come to the DigiYatra gate and stand in front of the gate. Your identity validation and the travel document validation both happen, right? And it is as simple as that, meaning that you just walk through every touch point. There is no need for you to get into a complex thing of opening up your PDF boarding pass on the phone and showing it to somebody, and then pulling out your identity card and showing it. So from a simplicity perspective, yes, it is very simple. But to actually connect with everyone, meaning that how do people enroll into our program? So we are actually getting into the stage where we want to connect to everyone in their own native language, and we have found this very much important, because I'll give you one example, or a story rather. So there is this one gentleman, right, and he put a YouTube video, and what he says is chappal aur gamche mein Maharaja ki savari, and then he's walking through the DigiYatra touch points. He's actually wearing chappals and he's having a gamcha on, and one of his friend is following behind him, and he walks through all the touch points of DigiYatra and goes to the boarding gate, right? And he keeps telling that, this is the new DigiYatra experience, chappal aur gamche mein Maharaja ki savari. So what we want to do is we want to actually connect to each and every individual in their own language, right? So that is something which we are going to do. We also want to make our app much more user friendly. So you will have an AI chatbot which will come up to help you either to enroll or to share your boarding pass, etc., etc., right? So the whole app experience revamp is something which we are currently working on, and you should see the fruits of it in the next 3 months, I would say.
And Suresh, are there plans to expand the services beyond airports, perhaps into other areas of travel or public transport?
So when we started DigiYatra itself, right, the whole vision was to become the travel stack of India, meaning that we want to be the enabler of travel, transportation, and hospitality. right? And obviously there could be these umpteen number of use cases. We have just touched the tip of the iceberg. For us, for now, I think the focus is on air travel. And what we have started doing is we have started work on e-passport based enrollment. So our prototype testing is, I would say, rigorous testing is in progress. And once we complete that piece, then the app actually truly becomes a global app, meaning that any international citizen with an electronic passport can actually enroll into the DigiYatra program. And then if you really look at the way our privacy preserving ecosystem is, so if you were to check into a hotel, I'll give you an example and maybe you can drive your inference from that. So you go to so you flew from say Bangalore to Delhi, and then you're checking into a hotel. When you go to the hotel, obviously they will ask for your booking details. You gave your booking details, and then they will say, okay, I found your booking. So and so is the room. I would need your identity card. And what would you do? You would either pull out your Aadhaar card, or you will pull out your passport, or if you're a tech savvy person, then you would pull out your phone, open the DigiLocker, show the Aadhaar on the DigiLocker app. And what would that person do at the guest counter? They will take a photo of that screenshot they will take, or they will take your document and take a photocopy. Now, this is all unencrypted identity information that they have already collected. Is it safe, right? Is it safe from a data leakage, data pilferage perspective? Right. So we can actually make this whole validation of identity at the hotel also much more seamless and much more privacy preserving, meaning that you don't have to actually give your identity card. What they need is that your identity is validated by a trusted source. And that could be done by using DigiYatra credentials. So that could be the next step, right? So from our perspective, this has huge potential. But as I said, our current focus is to enhance the usage, enhance the user experience of the app, add more number of airports, and obviously bring in the e-passport based enrollment, so that even international passengers can enjoy DigiYatra.
So Suresh, as you know, we are having this conversation in line with World Tourism Day. Tell me, how does DigiYatra contribute to improving the travel experience for tourists in India, and what role do you see technology playing in the future of tourism?
So this is a very interesting question, and I'm sure you traveled overseas as well. And say you traveled from Delhi to say Frankfurt, you would have gone through one process, which is the immigration process at the Indian airport. And then once you have crossed the Indian airport, flew to Frankfurt. At Frankfurt, invariably, right, morning is the time when we reach most of the European destinations, and you will find that many flights come together, and there are very few manual counters, right? And only manual counters are there for the immigration process. And sometimes I have myself experienced it so many times, right? That it takes close to 2 hours, right? At times for you to go through that whole immigration process itself, right? So I think one of the things that DigiYatra could do is to enhance this whole experience. And you asked about travel, right? And travel and tourism. So how do we? So we believe that a validation like this can actually have a huge socio-economic impact as well. And I'll tell you how. So, for example, the experience of traveling is one. Once you reach a particular destination, there will be so many places where your identity validation needs to be done. And every time, you have to be like, you have to have your passport. As if you're a foreign citizen, you need to have your passport in your hand. And that is your identity document. How about, DigiYatra credentials being used? So those are things which actually enable your whole experience to become much more seamless. And also, while becoming seamless, it is also a much more privacy preserving ecosystem. And look at what it will do to enhancing the efficiencies. And I was reading one article on LinkedIn as to how, at one of the tourist destinations, there becomes a major bottleneck during all these processes. So how do we actually streamline those processes? If we streamline those processes, then we are able to give our tourists a much better experience. And that, I believe, is the power of DigiYatra. And we feel that, we have value to add to the whole travel transportation. And hopefully, we will see very soon, a lot of these features coming up.
And finally, what is your long-term vision for DigiYatra, and how do you see the platform evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
So first is consolidation. I think airports across India. Second is international travel. And third is obviously other use cases, right? And I'll give one use case which again comes to my mind. These days we do have a number of online exams that people appear for, right? And there is a need for identity validation during this exam. So just think about it in a privacy preserving manner. DigiYatra credentials being used for that identity validation, right? That is just one use case that comes to my mind. And what we are now planning to do is we plan to open up our ecosystem. We are almost like done with our sandbox environment creation, and we want to give the rest of the users or the whole world to basically think about what innovation is possible on our credentials, and they could have a typical use case which is fit for their need, and they would build an ecosystem, test it out, and then we will say that okay, this works well, and then now you can become a verifier. So that's something which we are working towards, so that we open up the innovation exponentially.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time, Suresh. And with that, it's a wrap on this episode of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.